Welcome to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury.
Welcome back to Tax Resolution Talk with attorney Lance Drury. For more than 30 years, Lance has helped individuals and businesses face down the IRS. And now this podcast goes beyond tax resolution to explore what it really takes to run a successful law firm. I'm Evan Mack, and today's episode is all about the side of law that law school doesn't prepare you for: running a business. From staffing and marketing to money management and leadership, Lance shares the lessons he's learned over decades of building his practice. This is the business side of law, what they don't teach you in law school. Lance Drury, sir, welcome back.
Good morning, Evan. How you doing?
I'm well. Lance, law school prepares attorneys for the courtroom, but not really running the firm. When did you first realize those were two very different things?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if there was any one moment where I came to that realization, but they basically lie to you in law school. They act like you get this education, you're going to get all this money, you don't have to do anything else, you don't have to market. And that's a lie, because the guys that are making the money are the guys that bring in the clients. Those are the ones who bring in the money because they're the ones that are keeping the business going. And so what you have to do is you have to market yourself. You have to run your law practice like a business. And so that's the biggest thing that they don't teach you in law school, is they don't teach you how to run a successful law practice.
But looking back, what was the steepest learning curve for you when you opened your practice? Was it that building the clients? Was it that marketing? Was it like advertising yourself?
Yeah, I think, for a while I had a practice. I was with a gentleman out of Colorado, paid him a fee every month, but it wasn't expanding the way I wanted it because I wasn't in St. Louis. I was in rural Missouri, and it's a little tough to do. I had a show in Columbia, Missouri, which is about 100,000 people on the radio. But, you get a bigger bang for your buck when you're in a metropolitan area of almost 3 million people. And so I just decided one day, I've learned enough marketing now. I can do this on my own. And I was no longer part of that group, was not restricted. And I went into St. Louis, which was only 50 minutes away from Ste Genevieve, which is my primary office is. It's a small town, very historic, that I grew up in. And so I just came into the office one day and said, we're going into St. Louis and I'm going to start on the radio, because I had done enough to know that I had a gentleman out in California who had brought in $24 million in revenue, and he had done radio nationwide. Now, I've been asked to do radio nationwide, not only on Rush Limbaugh's show. I met with his agent a couple times,
Wow.
But also I talked to Clay Travis's and Sean Hannity's bosses and Glenn Beck's. But, I was worried not so much about the cost. It was very expensive. But how would we be able to keep out when that commercial ran? I just think the phones would have been off they would have been all tied up. We wouldn't have been able to access them all. And so I've never done that, but I am expanding more into social media now, as well as radio, as well as Google. And I get a lot of referrals from my bi-monthly newsletter.
What were some of the earlier mistakes you made as a business owner that turned into those lessons that you were talking about in the last episode?
Well, I think I was too cautious. I think that, I didn't move fast enough. I've always been very analytical. And I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, the time comes when you just got to stick your neck out and say, I'm going for it. We're going to do it. Now, you don't want to be hasty about it, but you do want to take calculated risk. And I didn't see much of a downside with going into St. Louis. And we've now expanded into Nashville, into San Antonio, and we're going into Houston by November 1st. And the beauty of Houston, Evan, is this. Houston's metropolitan area is bigger than St. Louis, Nashville, and San Antonio combined.
Wow.
And so my San Antonio attorneys are in Houston right now, getting an office set up. We're hiring a bilingual legal assistant in San Antonio. So by the 1st of November, we're going to have an office in Houston, and we'll be able to take calls from people there. So we're ready to go, Evan. We're ready to go, and we'll be ready come November 1st for Houston, Texas.
Unbelievable, unbelievable stuff. Talk to me about the importance. How important is it for attorneys to think like entrepreneurs and not just legal professionals? Kind of switch that mindset a little bit.
Well, I think it's critical if they truly want to be successful. If they're not concerned about making any money,
Hmm.
that's fine. If they want to work long hours for low pay and work Saturdays, Sunday mornings, I still work Saturday and Sunday mornings, but I'm making a lot more money than I did when I was just a small town lawyer. And I didn't mind it then. I was glad I did it. I was a public defender. I did week-long murder trials. I ran 8 offices for the Missouri Public Defender System. But it's what I'm doing now is what I should have been doing a long time ago. I finally found the thing that makes me, I mean, I always wanted to get up. I always wanted to help people.
Hmm.
And it's very similar to my criminal defense because, as I said before, I'm helping the little guy against the big bad wolf, the federal government. And I like being the guy that protects, the little guy against the overbearing reach of the federal government, that being the Internal Revenue Service now.
You talked to me in previous episodes about how important your staff is and how you've built a lot of great lawyers, all across America. So those can be challenges. That can be a challenge in any business as far as hiring the proper staff. What have you learned about building the right team for your law firm?
Well, it's been a lot of trial and error, and I just have in the past put in advertisements in the St. Louis area, in the Nashville area, seeking people to come in. And so we had a lot of problems with some enrolled agents. I'm sticking to attorneys from here on out because they're versed in negotiations, they're versed in argumentation, they're more client oriented. They truly want to help their client, and they work longer hours. And so all of those things have gotten me to that. And one of the things Evan I didn't do, which is a change, we are not advertising locally anymore for attorneys.
Mm.
I have a headhunter who's situated in Texas. I think he lives in Austin, Texas. And I'm going through him. Those headhunters are expensive, but I tell you, the quality of the people, I now have 3 people through him. And I've been in contact with him because I said the floodgates are going to open soon. We're expanding the practice. So you better be ready to hire me a bunch of attorneys because we're going into Houston, Texas and beyond. And we're going to make this place a national law firm.
Awesome. Marketing isn't something most lawyers are comfortable with. Not even people with any business are comfortable with. How did you approach getting your name and your practice out there?
Well, I got on the radio and I did things like that. And you're absolutely right. Most lawyers don't want to do this. They
No.
didn't go to law school to be marketers. They went to law school to be an attorney. And so that's what they don't teach in law school. And that's what they need to teach people. That if you just want to be a regular small town attorney, and it's not very profitable, most small town attorneys don't make a whole lot of money. Uh, that's fine if that's what you want to do. But, I wanted to help as many people as possible. When I was just a small town attorney, I probably had 50 to 60 clients at a time. We now have more than 1,000 clients at a time.
Wow.
And I want to make that 2,000 to 3,000 clients at a time.
Wow.
Because as I tell my people, we have a moral obligation to help as many people as possible. We want to give them their lives back. I'm the liberation architect, Evan. Most tax attorneys talk numbers. I talk financial freedom. I save people's businesses. I save their marriages. I save their assets. I save their income. I save their retirement. I'm the guy who's saving Fay Ray from the clutches of King Kong, and that's what I want to continue to do.
We gotta get you a cape, Lance. Got you just a cape. Whenever they walk into the office.
Well, I got to tell you, I could never have done this alone. I have great people working for me. My legal assistants are all excellent. When I sit down with people for the first time, they'll talk about whoever answered the phone and they talk to, and they'll rant and rave about the quality. And some of them have excellent people skills when they talk to these people. And they're really the ones who convince these people to come to this firm because that's their first point of contact. And
Yep.
if they have a bad experience at that first contact, they're not going to sign up with me. They're going to say, "Oh, this firm's not very professionally run. I need to go look elsewhere." So I have to tip my hat to the people who are here because I could never have done this without each and every one of them.
Incredible stuff. Money management is another side of a law firm life that people don't really talk about that much. How do you recommend attorneys keep their practice financially healthy?
Well, you've got to keep track of, your different marketing. You got to test the markets, and not everything is going to work. So you don't want to start out really big, but you need to expand into different areas and see what works. For some people, it's lien letters. I don't know if you know what that is. I used to do it. I don't do it anymore. But those federal tax liens are a matter of public record because they're
Mm,
filed in the recorder of deeds office in the county in which these people live. And guess what? There's companies that compile a list of these and then sell them to tax resolution people like me. And so then you can send out these letters to these people and tell, hey, you got a tax lien. Here's what you need to do. Call me. We'll get your problem resolved. We have found, and I know some people that still do that. We don't do that anymore because we think we get a bigger bang for our buck in other areas, but you really got to track uh, what the return on investment for each of your marketing vehicles is.
mm. So for attorneys listening who are just starting out, what's one piece of advice you'd give them about treating their practice like a business?
Well, they have to look at the bottom line and they have to do whatever it's going to take to keep that bottom line healthy where they're not struggling from month to month. I mean, I know attorneys. I mean, the judge here in town when he was in private practice said, they wouldn't know until the end of the month if they were going to make any money or not. And
Mm,
so you've got to find something. You got to do what everybody in business does. The people that are successful in business, they find out what is the customer's need. What do they need? And I have found this niche, and maybe 1% of attorneys are involved in this, maybe 2 to 3% of accountants. And I would not recommend people going to an accountant. They're great with the numbers, but 90% of what they do is tax preparation. They don't deal with the IRS. So I've seen, and all my attorneys have seen accountants give atrocious advice to their clients. But you got to make sure that you're cognizant of the bottom line and you do the things that you're going to be successful. And you have to have an entrepreneurial set of mind if you're going to be successful in your law practice.
mm. And to wrap things up, Lance, after decades of practice, what's the biggest takeaway you've learned about balancing your role as a lawyer, a leader, an entrepreneur, business owner?
I think the biggest thing is, you've got to find good people surrounding you. You got to have good teammates with unique set of skills. Everybody brings something different to the table. We have that now. I've been doing this for 20 years or longer. And, it's just you got to have good teammates. You got to have your unique identity. And I do have that. I'm the liberation architect. I'm the guy who's going to save you from the clutches of the IRS. And so you have to be able to get your name out there. You have to find in marketing what's going to work. You got to test the market and you got to keep it up. You got to stay with it and you got to change with the times. Here's the thing now. I'm involved in artificial intelligence. In fact, I'm involved in more. It's called actualized intelligence. And what is going to happen is, law firms are going to get sued if they're not using artificial intelligence. And people are going to complain because you can save so much time
Wow.
with the use of artificial intelligence. Now, you got to have an attorney review it, make sure everything's correct. But, they can do a lengthy complaint in an hour or less that would take you 10 hours to do. And
Wow.
so if you're billing these people at a 10-hour rate, guess what's going to happen down the road? So, you got to keep up with the times. I'm 72, Evan, but you can still teach an old dog new tricks.
You better believe it. Lance Drury, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Evan. It's always a great pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And thank you all for joining us on Tax Resolution Talk with Lance Drury. If you enjoyed today's conversation about the business side of law, make sure to connect with Lance at lancedrurylaw.com. Also, don't forget to like, leave a review, and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.